What if everything Meghan Markle believed about her place in the royal family was built on a lie? Imagine discovering that the woman who had been a pillar of your world, the Queen herself, harbored private doubts that could redefine your life forever. Princess, and often regarded as the royal family's most steadfast and perceptive member, reportedly stumbled upon something that shook the very foundations of the palace. A letter, handwritten, private, a comparison so pointed, so loaded with judgment, that it was never meant for anyone's eyes except the Queen's closest confidences. And yet, and saw it, and Meghan had no idea it even existed. The palace corridors, long thought to be halls of decorum and tradition, conceal far more than gold candelabras and centuries-old portraits. They hide whispers, judgments, and secrets, some whispered between mother and daughter, others scrawled in the Queen's own hand. This particular letter contained a comparison between Meghan Markle and Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, a comparison the Queen carefully crafted, praising Kate's sincerity while casting shadows of doubt on Meghan's intentions. Self-serving, calculated, not sincere, words that could feel like daggers when viewed in the right, or wrong, light. And the implications were enormous. Meghan had entered the royal family as a beloved public figure, a symbol of modernity, charisma, and promise. Yet in private, the Queen's words suggested caution, a warning, a private skepticism that Meghan never suspected existed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For decades, the monarchy has been an institution shrouded in mystique, ritual, and absolute control over perception. Publicly, the royals project unity, stability, and grace. But private correspondences, diaries, and letters reveal the human truths behind the crown, an intricate dance of loyalty, distrust, affection, and rivalry. The letter and discovered is just one thread in a tapestry of royal life that Meghan had to navigate without a map. Consider for a moment the pressure, the scrutiny, and the emotional labor required to perform your life under the watchful eyes of the public while navigating the hidden judgments of your family's most powerful members. Princess Anne's discovery did not come without internal conflict. Known for her blunt honesty and no-nonsense approach, and is not the type to act impulsively, especially when family matters are at stake. Imagine the dilemma. Do you protect the family's privacy, maintain loyalty to the Queen, or do you acknowledge the truth and risk igniting a scandal that could consume decades of carefully maintained reputation? And chose to read. And what she saw was enough to cause a pause, a moment of reflection, and perhaps even concern over how Meghan would handle such revelations. This was no ordinary letter. It was a blueprint of the Queen's private assessment, a comparison of two women who would become central to the royal narrative and the subtle warnings one might contain. The first thing to understand is the nature of royal letters. The Queen, like many in the monarchy, has perfected the art of subtlety. One word, one phrase, can convey approval or disapproval, encouragement or caution. To the untrained eye, the letters may seem benign, even mundane. But to someone who understands the nuances of court language, the letters reveal deeper intentions, hidden assessments, and discreet guidance. In this particular instance, the Queen's praise of Catherine's sincerity was not merely a compliment. It was a subtle signal. Kate's authenticity was being highlighted as a benchmark, a gold standard of character. And by extension, Meghan's assessment, self-serving intentions, was positioned as a cautionary note. Not harsh, not public, but deliberate, calculated. And it was a judgment that Meghan herself would likely never see, unless fate intervened. We have to pause for a moment and consider Meghan's perspective. Imagine being new to the royal family, navigating the traditions, rules, and expectations that have evolved over centuries. You enter as a beloved figure, celebrated by media and public alike. You assume that your heart, your intentions, and your devotion to duty will be judged by deeds, by public service, by authenticity. And yet, in private, a powerful figure, the Queen, has already formed an opinion. A private opinion, yes, but one that carries weight, influence, and silent consequences. The disparity between public praise and private skepticism is not just a curiosity. It's a source of potential tension, emotional strain, and even personal conflict. How do you perform your role when you know? or even suspect, that your actions may be quietly questioned at the highest levels. This is where the story becomes more than just a royal anecdote. It's about trust, perception, and the subtle ways in which power operates behind closed doors. It's about the careful balancing act of managing relationships within the family, protecting your own integrity, and navigating the silent judgments that can determine the course of your public and private life. Princess Anne, as the observer, as the discoverer of this private letter, now occupies a unique position. She holds knowledge that could shift dynamics, inform decisions, and influence the paths of those involved. Her choices matter, because in a family where protocol and discretion are paramount, the act of reading or not reading a letter can carry as much significance as the words themselves. And yet, the Queen's letters were never just about evaluation. They were about legacy, about shaping the future of the monarchy, about guiding her family in ways both subtle and profound. By comparing Meghan and Kate, the Queen was not simply making a personal judgment. She was expressing her hopes, concerns, and priorities for the women who would come to embody the modern royal family. Kate's sincerity was highlighted as a model, a standard to be admired and followed. Meghan's self-serving tendencies, as the Queen perceived them, were a cautionary note, a warning not to be taken lightly. These letters reveal the unspoken rules, the tacit expectations, and the quiet pressures that exist behind the crown's public image. And they illuminate a truth that is as old as the monarchy itself. Appearances matter, intentions are scrutinized, and private judgments often carry consequences far beyond their immediate circle. Now consider Princess Anne's reaction again. Known for her protective instincts toward family, her devotion to duty, and her keen understanding of royal dynamics, Anne's discovery placed her at a crossroads. Should she alert Meghan? Should she keep this knowledge to herself? Should she use it as leverage, or let it sit quietly in the shadows? The moral and emotional complexity of this moment is staggering. And for Meghan, the possibility of learning about the Queen's private assessments, even indirectly, could have reshaped her strategies, her relationships, and her approach to life within the royal family. It's a question of timing, perception, and power. When a secret is discovered, the choices surrounding its disclosure can be as consequential as the secret itself. And here is where we must leave the introduction, at the edge of revelation, at the moment where tension hangs in the air like a heavy velvet curtain. The Queen's letters, Princess Anne's discovery, and Meghan's unawareness create a perfect storm of intrigue, emotion, and suspense. What will happen when these private thoughts are eventually revealed? How will Meghan reconcile public perception with private judgment? And what role will Princess Anne play as the keeper, or perhaps the revealer, of this secret? The answers are complex, layered, and deeply human, touching on themes of trust, ambition, love, and legacy. But what Princess Anne discovered next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What did the Queen really think about Meghan Markle behind closed doors? That's a question that has haunted royal observers, biographers, and insiders for years. Publicly, Queen Elizabeth maintained the perfect image of unity, grace, and composure, never letting her personal judgments interfere with the carefully orchestrated image of the monarchy. But behind the locked doors of Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and Sandringham, the story was entirely different. The Queen's private handwriting, her letters, notes, and personal diaries, offers a rare and unfiltered window into her mind, revealing thoughts she would never speak aloud, decisions she would quietly guide, and judgments she would make about the people closest to her. These letters were never meant to be seen by the public. They were intimate, deliberate, and meticulously crafted. Each word chosen with care, every phrase measured to convey subtle approval, gentle caution, or private disapproval. To an outsider, they might seem innocuous. To a trained eye, like Princess Anne's, they were maps of loyalty, trust, and the future of the family. In these private correspondences, Queen Elizabeth compared Meghan and Kate, highlighting qualities that could determine not only how each woman fit into the royal family, but also how they would shape its legacy. The Queen's handwriting is distinctive, precise, disciplined, and slightly formal, reflecting both her personality and the weight of her responsibilities. But within that formality lies emotion, subtlety, and intention. What stands out immediately in the letters and reportedly discovered is the careful juxtaposition between Meghan and Kate. Kate's sincerity is praised in a tone that is almost reverential. A woman who respects tradition, values public service, and understands the delicate balance required to live under the crown. In contrast, Meghan's intentions are described with caution, a warning wrapped in politeness, self-serving, calculated, ambitious. These words were not intended for Meghan's eyes, yet they carry the kind of weight that can silently influence family dynamics, relationships, and trust. Imagine learning that the matriarch of your family viewed you as someone whose motives required scrutiny. The impact is profound, especially when that family is the royal family, where power, protocol, and perception intertwine like a tightly woven tapestry. The Queen had always been known for her discretion and her ability to observe silently before acting. Publicly, she treated Meghan with courtesy, warmth, and the appearance of equality. But her private notes reveal an entirely different layer of understanding, one that reflects decades of experience managing personalities, ambitions, and expectations within a family that is constantly under scrutiny. These letters are evidence that the Queen's judgments were not casual, they were deliberate and considered. Every word had meaning, every sentence a purpose. The comparison between Meghan and Kate was not just personal, it was strategic. It was a guidepost for the family, a subtle attempt to shape the behavior and decisions of those around her. Consider the psychological impact on Princess Anne, who reportedly read these letters. Known for her straightforward, no-nonsense approach to life, and has always had a keen understanding of both the royal institution and the human beings who operate within it. For her, reading the Queen's private letters would have been both illuminating and alarming. Illuminating because they revealed the Queen's expectations, judgments, and subtle manipulations. Alarming because they exposed tensions and potential conflicts that could affect the stability of the family and the public's perception of the monarchy. Anne's position as a witness to these private thoughts placed her in a unique and delicate role: protector, interpreter, and possibly mediator. What is most striking about the Queen's comparison is the clarity with which she delineated her preferences and concerns. Kate is portrayed as the embodiment of the qualities that sustain the monarchy: dedication, discretion, authenticity. Meghan, by contrast, is framed as someone whose motives may be guided by personal gain rather than duty or service. These judgments, though private, are powerful. In an institution where perception is paramount, a single opinion, especially the Queen's, can ripple outward, influencing decisions, relationships, and even public narratives. The letters suggest that the Queen was not just observing. She was assessing, guiding, and subtly warning. It is important to note that these letters also reveal the Queen's humanity. Despite the weight of her crown, she was capable of reflection, concern, and careful deliberation. She understood the complexities of introducing a new family member into the royal fold, particularly one who brought her own ambitions, charisma, and public presence. Meghan was not entering an empty role. She was stepping into a centuries-old institution with its own traditions, expectations, and silent hierarchies. The Queen's words, though private, reflect an acute awareness of these dynamics. They show a monarch balancing her affection for family with the demands of legacy and continuity. Furthermore, the Queen's handwriting conveys more than just words, it conveys emotion. The careful spacing, the firmness of the pen strokes, and the deliberate phrasing all speak to a monarch deeply engaged with her responsibilities and deeply aware of the potential consequences of misjudgment. It is a reminder that even in an era dominated by public appearances, the written word retains its power to communicate nuance, intention, and judgment in ways that speech often cannot. The letters become more than documents. They are instruments of influence, legacy, and, in this case, private guidance that could have long-lasting implications for the royal family. For Meghan, if she had ever learned of these letters, the revelation could be earth-shattering. To be compared unfavorably to her sister-in-law, privately evaluated by the Queen, and characterized as self-serving would challenge her understanding of her role and her place in the family. It would confront her with a truth she may not have anticipated, that private perceptions, carefully recorded and preserved, hold a weight that can surpass public opinion, influence decisions, and shape relationships. The tension between private judgment and public persona becomes clear. The crown, while a symbol of unity, also operates as a network of hidden expectations and silent assessments. Princess Anne's discovery of these letters also speaks to the broader theme of loyalty and discretion within the royal family, and has always been respected for her integrity, her clarity of judgment, and her willingness to speak when necessary, but also for knowing when silence serves a greater purpose. The letters place her in a position where she must navigate the delicate balance between protecting family secrets and acknowledging truths that could not remain hidden forever. It is a test of her discernment, her loyalty, and her understanding of the stakes involved. The significance of these letters cannot be overstated. They illuminate the Queen's expectations for those who marry into the family, the qualities she values most, and the subtle ways in which she communicates guidance and judgment. They reveal a monarch who is both strategic and human, aware of the implications of her private words, and invested in shaping the character and conduct of those around her. And they reveal a family dynamic that is complex, layered, and fraught with the tensions of ambition, perception, and loyalty. As we move forward in this story, it is essential to remember that the Queen's private handwriting is not merely a curiosity. It is a key to understanding the hidden layers of royal life, the invisible pressures faced by Meghan, and the quiet influence exerted by Princess Anne. The letters set the stage for revelations, confrontations, and decisions that will echo through the palace halls, the public's imagination, and the personal lives of those involved. But what Princess Anne discovered next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine walking down the quiet halls of a palace that has stood for centuries, the echoes of history reverberating against cold stone walls. Portraits of monarchs past watch silently from their frames, each gaze a reminder of the weight of legacy, duty, and discretion. For most, these corridors are simply grand architecture. For Princess Anne, they are corridors of truth, of secrets, and, on this particular day, revelation. What she was about to discover would not only shock her personally, but could also have profound implications for the entire royal family, especially for Meghan Markle. The moment began innocuously, and, meticulous as ever, was reviewing correspondence and private archives in her capacity as a guardian of royal records. Known for her exacting standards and unwavering attention to detail, she approached each document with care, as if each sheet of paper were a fragment of a larger puzzle. What she found that day, however, was no ordinary piece of paperwork. Tucked away in a seemingly ordinary envelope, yellowed slightly with age and stamped with the Queen's personal insignia, lay a letter that would change the way she saw the dynamics between Meghan and Catherine forever. At first glance, it appeared formal, almost procedural. But Anne's trained eyes quickly picked up on the subtle nuances, the careful choice of words, the faintly authoritative tone, and the underlying messages encoded between lines. The Queen, ever precise in her language, had written with intent, drawing sharp, quiet distinctions between two women who would come to play pivotal roles in the family. One woman was praised openly for her sincerity, humility, and devotion to duty. The other, Meghan, was framed in language that suggested caution, a gentle warning wrapped in polite prose, self-serving, calculated, perhaps not yet ready to navigate the complexities of palace life. And paused, feeling the weight of the discovery. These words were private, never intended for public scrutiny. And yet, here they were, revealed to her eyes alone. What struck Anne most was the clarity with which the Queen had evaluated the personalities, intentions, and potential trajectories of both women. Kate's path had been mapped with careful encouragement, while Meghan's had been noted with concern. It was a subtle but unmistakable line drawn in ink, a private comparison that carried immense psychological and relational significance. As she continued to read, and found herself confronted with a series of contradictions. Publicly, the Queen had welcomed Meghan with warmth and grace, orchestrating appearances that projected unity and acceptance. Privately, however, these letters suggested reservations, skepticism, and quiet apprehension, and realized that this duality was emblematic of royal life itself. The necessity to maintain an image of harmony while privately grappling with doubts, concerns, and judgments. The tension between public performance and private perception had rarely been so starkly illustrated. What made the discovery even more startling was the potential impact on Meghan. Imagine being a newcomer to the royal family, only to later learn that the matriarch of the dynasty had evaluated you privately in such a critical light. The knowledge, if it were ever to reach her, could feel like a betrayal, a silent judgment that shaped relationships, trust, and influence. And, understanding the sensitivity, faced an immediate moral dilemma. What should she do with this knowledge? Princess Anne's reputation within the family is built on integrity, discretion, and fierce loyalty. She has often been the voice of reason during turbulent moments, the one who observes quietly, assesses carefully, and intervenes only when necessary. This discovery placed her in a precarious position. Should she share the letter with Meghan, offering insight into the Queen's private mind, but potentially igniting a storm of tension? Should she keep it secret, protecting both Meghan's peace of mind and the sanctity of the Queen's personal thoughts? Or should she use it strategically, subtly influencing the family's dynamics in a way that preserved legacy while revealing truth? The palace itself seemed to heighten the drama. The corridors, lined with ancestral portraits and tapestries depicting centuries of monarchy, created a sense of timeless scrutiny. It was as if the walls themselves were bearing witness to the decision and now faced. Every step she took, every word she read, felt loaded with consequence. The air seemed heavier, more charged, as if the past and present were colliding within the quiet archive room. And understood that the letters she had uncovered were not just a reflection of the Queen's private opinion. They were instruments of influence, capable of shaping relationships, perceptions, and even the course of the royal family's future. Anne's internal conflict was amplified by the human dimension of the revelation. Meghan, despite her public composure and charisma, was a real person navigating a complex institution with high stakes. The letters exposed vulnerabilities, perceived misalignments of intent, and potential pitfalls, and recognized that revealing these letters could provoke defensive reactions, hurt feelings, or a reevaluation of trust within the family. Yet, remaining silent also carried weight. Secrets of this magnitude rarely remain contained indefinitely, and the longer they stayed hidden, the more explosive their eventual revelation might become. Furthermore, the discovery underscored the Queen's strategic genius. Through a few carefully chosen words, she had managed to convey guidance, caution, and evaluation without overstepping the boundaries of propriety or decorum. Kate was elevated, Meghan was subtly warned, and Anne was entrusted, whether intentionally or not, with the role of observer and custodian. The intricacy of this maneuver reflects decades of experience, intuition, and an acute understanding of human behavior. It also illuminates the delicate mechanisms by which the monarchy maintains both order and perception, blending affection with authority in ways that are nearly invisible to outsiders. Anne's reaction was likely multifaceted: admiration for the Queen's insight, concern for Meghan's potential distress, and an awareness of the broader implications for family harmony. She understood that these letters were more than correspondence. They were legacy, influence, and private counsel, all rolled into one. The ethical, emotional, and strategic considerations she faced were immense, requiring her to balance compassion, discretion, and loyalty simultaneously. Each scenario she imagined carried potential consequences, both immediate and long-term. The discovery also hinted at deeper patterns within the royal family's private communications. Letters, diaries, and handwritten notes have historically served as channels for conveying unspoken truths, guidance, and warnings. In this instance, the Queen's comparison between Meghan and Kate was both instructive and cautionary. It highlighted the traits she valued, the behaviors she endorsed, and the concerns she held for those who joined the family through marriage. The letters encapsulated the subtle power dynamics, expectations, and emotional currents that define life within the monarchy. And yet, the question that lingers is how Meghan would react if she ever knew. Would she feel betrayed, misunderstood, or motivated to prove herself? Would she see the Queen's caution as an obstacle or as guidance? The emotional stakes are as high as the historical ones. This is a family whose private judgments ripple outward into public perception, legacy, and personal relationships. Anne's decision about whether or not to disclose the letters carries consequences not just for Meghan, but for the cohesion, stability, and narrative of the entire royal household. As Anne set the letters aside, the weight of her discovery remained. She had glimpsed the Queen's unfiltered thoughts, understood her private evaluations, and recognized the immense responsibility now resting on her shoulders. Every choice moving forward, whether to reveal, conceal, or strategically employ this knowledge, had the potential to alter family dynamics, media narratives, and the personal journeys of Meghan, Kate, and even the Queen herself. And in that moment, Princess Anne understood something profound. Secrets in the royal family are never simply private. They are forces capable of shaping destinies, stirring tensions, and redefining legacies. The letters she discovered were more than words on paper. They were instruments of influence, revelations that could change the course of relationships, trust, and perception within the palace walls. But what Princess Anne chose to do next would ignite a chain reaction no one could have anticipated, and Meghan would soon feel the tremors of this revelation in ways that would shake the very foundation of her royal experience. Imagine discovering that someone had drawn a line between you and your sister-in-law, a line so stark it could shape the trajectory of your life without your knowledge. That is exactly what the Queen's letters, reportedly discovered by Princess Anne, reveal. A comparison so pointed, so calculated, that it was never intended for public eyes. It is one thing to face scrutiny from the media, critics, or strangers. It is entirely another to be quietly evaluated by the matriarch of your family, her words recorded in ink, private and unwavering. Meghan Markle entered the royal family as a beloved public figure, celebrated for her charisma, charm, and modernity. Yet behind palace doors, the Queen had already assessed her, and drawn an implicit contrast with Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. The letters are precise, almost surgical, in the way they delineate traits and expectations. Kate is praised for her sincerity, her grounded nature, and her understanding of what it means to be part of the monarchy. She embodies qualities that have been historically celebrated within the family: loyalty, humility, discretion, and a steadfast sense of duty. Every word used to describe Kate conveys admiration and trust. There is warmth, there is assurance, and there is a subtle signal that she is someone whose intentions are aligned with the Crown's long-term vision. Meghan, on the other hand, is framed differently. The Queen's private assessment reportedly points to self-serving tendencies, a note of caution, a gentle, but unmistakable, warning. The language is careful, almost polite, but unmistakably critical. Calculated, and perhaps too ambitious, are the phrases that ring like quiet alarms to anyone reading between the lines. These words are not casual observations. They are strategic evaluations, judgments intended to guide behavior and manage expectations. In essence, Meghan is placed on notice, not publicly, but privately. It is a subtle red flag that she may not fully comprehend the nuances of palace life, or the unspoken codes that govern trust, loyalty, and influence within the royal household. To fully grasp the implications, consider the environment Meghan was entering. The monarchy is not merely an institution. It is a living organism with traditions, hierarchies, and invisible rules that govern every interaction. Each member is constantly observed, assessed, and measured against expectations both public and private. Kate's path to favor was deliberate, her demeanor and actions consistently reinforcing qualities the Queen valued. Meghan, while undoubtedly talented, charismatic, and modern, brought with her a sense of independence and ambition that the Queen, in her private letters, regarded with cautious scrutiny. The contrast is not just personal. It is emblematic of the subtle ways in which power, perception, and legacy operate within the palace. Princess Anne's discovery of these letters gave her an intimate view into this contrast, and, known for her candid honesty and no-nonsense approach, recognized the delicacy of the situation. On one hand, the letters offered insight into the Queen's mind, her expectations, and her private judgments. On the other, they revealed tensions that, if made public or even discussed within the wrong circles, could ignite drama, resentment, or misinterpretation. And understood the stakes. This comparison between Meghan and Kate was not just a private opinion. It was a roadmap, a subtle guide for how the family should navigate relationships, alliances, and perceptions moving forward. The implications for Meghan are profound. Being labeled as self-serving or overly ambitious is one thing in public opinion. It is another when the matriarch of your family holds that assessment privately, potentially influencing how every interaction, every assignment, and every expectation is framed. Imagine learning, years later, that your actions had been silently scrutinized in ways you never imagined, that your motives were questioned before you even had a chance to prove your intentions. The emotional impact is immense. Hurt, disbelief, perhaps even a sense of betrayal. Yet the comparison is more than just critique. It is an unspoken instruction, a signal that the Queen's preference and trust lie in Kate. The choice of words is telling. While Kate is lauded for authenticity and groundedness, Meghan is described in terms of caution, her motives examined with a critical eye. This creates an invisible hierarchy, one that Meghan would have to navigate carefully. In essence, the letters lay bare the delicate, often unspoken negotiations required of anyone who marries into the royal family. How to align personal ambitions with the expectations of tradition, duty, and family loyalty. Consider also the psychological dimension. Humans are highly sensitive to perceived favoritism, especially in close-knit environments. Meghan's awareness, or eventual awareness, of the Queen's private assessment could influence her behavior, confidence, and decision-making. The letters, in effect, are a lens through which Meghan's position within the family can be understood and through which her actions could be interpreted, justified, or scrutinized. Kate's praised sincerity becomes the standard. Meghan's cautionary note becomes the benchmark against which she is measured. This comparison also reveals the Queen's strategic thinking. By framing the contrast in private correspondence, she maintains public harmony while guiding private behavior. She elevates one individual, gently cautions another, and ensures that her observations are preserved for those capable of understanding the nuance. In doing so, the Queen demonstrates an acute understanding of human behavior, influence, and legacy. Every word in the letters serves a purpose. Every phrase is intentional, and every judgment carries weight, quietly shaping the path of the women who would define the modern monarchy. But perhaps the most striking element is the subtlety of emotion embedded within the letters. The Queen's praise for Kate is not simply perfunctory. It carries warmth, approval, and confidence. Meghan's evaluation, by contrast, is gentle but firm, a warning delivered with tact, a private acknowledgement that caution is warranted. There is a human element here, too. The Queen is not harshly condemning Meghan, but she is perceptive, discerning, and unapologetically honest in her private reflections. This is a woman who understands that words carry consequences, that private assessments influence relationships, and that legacy is maintained not only through public actions, but also through careful, deliberate guidance. Princess Anne, witnessing this, likely felt a mixture of admiration, concern, and apprehension. Admiration for the Queen's clarity, concern for Meghan's potential emotional response if she ever learned, and apprehension about the broader implications for family cohesion. The letters provide an unfiltered look into the challenges of integrating a new family member into a centuries-old institution, revealing both the human and strategic dimensions of monarchy. And, in her role as observer and confidant, is uniquely positioned to understand the full impact of these revelations and to anticipate the ripple effects that may follow. As we reflect on this private comparison, it becomes clear that the Queen's words were not merely personal judgments. They were instruments of influence. They shaped perception, guided behavior, and subtly established expectations. Kate's praise set a model for alignment with family values, while Meghan's cautionary note served as a reminder of the delicate balance required to navigate royal life. The emotional stakes are immense. Trust, perception, and loyalty all hinge on these subtle distinctions. And yet, the tension is only beginning. Meghan may never have suspected such a private evaluation existed, but once revealed, through the whispers of the palace, through leaks, or through Princess Anne's careful discretion, it could reshape relationships, influence public perception, and alter the emotional dynamics of the family. The comparison, though private, has the power to redefine the narrative, challenge assumptions, and provoke reactions that ripple across both personal and public spheres. But what Meghan would do upon discovering this comparison, how she would confront the implications, the judgments, and the unspoken hierarchy, was something no one in the palace could have predicted. What happens when private perceptions collide with public expectation? In the royal family, the consequences can be seismic. Princess Anne's discovery of the Queen's letters, comparing Meghan Markle and Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, illuminates a fault line that had been quietly forming for years. These letters are more than mere words. They are mirrors reflecting the unspoken hierarchies, invisible judgments, and subtle expectations that govern life behind palace walls. For Meghan, the implications are profound. The very fabric of trust, acceptance, and belonging within the royal household is being quietly measured and weighed, and the scales are not entirely in her favor. Royal life is governed by layers of privilege, tradition, and perception. Every action, gesture, and word is interpreted within a complex web of meaning. The Queen's letters, intended for private eyes, subtly codify these interpretations, drawing distinctions between behavior deemed trustworthy and behavior that requires caution. Kate, praised for her sincerity, authenticity, and groundedness, becomes the benchmark. Meghan, cautioned as potentially self-serving, occupies a space defined by scrutiny and tentative trust. The rift is not overt. It is woven into daily interactions, subtly influencing how tasks are delegated, responsibilities assigned, and praise or critique delivered. Consider the psychological impact. When one individual in a high-profile family is silently elevated and another privately warned, the dynamic inevitably influences interactions. Meghan may sense subtle shifts in tone, differential treatment, or a lack of unquestioned trust, even if she does not yet know why. Kate, meanwhile, benefits from the quiet reinforcement of her authenticity, creating a feedback loop that reinforces her position within the family hierarchy. Perception becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Queen's private judgment affects relationships, which in turn shape public behavior, which reinforces perceptions of authenticity or ambition. Princess Anne, positioned as the custodian of the Queen's private thoughts, understood the stakes. Anne's insight into the family dynamic is unparalleled. She has observed the intricate interplay of personalities for decades and knows how easily small signals can escalate into major rifts. Her role requires balance. To navigate loyalty to the Queen, protect the integrity of family relationships, and interpret the impact of private knowledge. In this context, Anne's discovery of the letters is both illuminating and dangerous. The fault line revealed is subtle, but the pressure it exerts is immense. The rift is compounded by the very nature of Meghan's integration into the royal family. She did not grow up immersed in centuries of tradition, formal expectation, and quiet protocol. Her approach, though charismatic and modern, occasionally clashes with the rhythms of palace life. Her independence, assertiveness, and desire to shape her own narrative are traits celebrated in the public sphere but interpreted differently within the private confines of monarchy. In contrast, Kate's upbringing, temperament, and careful alignment with family expectations reinforce her standing, creating a silent tension between the two women that the letters only make more apparent. Beyond personality and upbringing, there is the matter of trust. The Queen's letters, by praising Kate and cautioning Meghan, establish a framework of confidence. Trust, in royal terms, is not casual, it is foundational. Decisions about responsibility, visibility, and succession are often influenced by assessments of character and intention. A private note labeling someone as self-serving, even gently, has the power to shape perceptions among senior family members, advisors, and staff. Meghan's path, though publicly applauded, is shadowed by the quiet caution encoded in those private words. Privilege amplifies the impact. The monarchy is not just a family. It is an institution where status, duty, and public image are intertwined. Every member has visibility, influence, and expectation, but the distribution is uneven. Kate benefits from implicit trust and alignment with the Queen's vision, a privilege Meghan is only beginning to navigate. Letters, subtle remarks, and private counsel serve as tools for guiding behavior within this hierarchical ecosystem. For Meghan, every choice carries heightened significance. A misstep, whether public or private, can reinforce perceptions hinted at in the Queen's letters. The emotional stakes are equally high. The comparison between Meghan and Kate, even when unseen by Meghan, fosters an invisible pressure that shapes self-perception, confidence, and relational dynamics. Meghan's awareness of differential treatment, whether through body language, delegation of tasks, or the subtle tone of approval, may create tension, defensiveness, or doubt. Kate, conversely, experiences affirmation, confidence, and reinforcement, further widening the psychological gap between the two women. This dynamic is not merely interpersonal. It is structural, embedded in the very architecture of royal life. The letters also illuminate the broader mechanisms of influence within the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth's careful wording achieves multiple purposes simultaneously. It elevates, it warns, and it guides. Kate is positioned as the model of ideal behavior, Meghan as a figure to watch and mentor carefully. This duality demonstrates the Queen's mastery of perception management. She can maintain public harmony, communicate privately, and influence outcomes without confrontation or public controversy. It is a subtle, yet powerful, exercise of authority that underscores the complexity of royal relationships. What is particularly striking is the Queen's ability to communicate both praise and caution without overt confrontation. The letters reflect an acute understanding of human psychology, a subtlety that can have profound effects on those who discover them. Meghan's awareness of these dynamics would trigger introspection, self-evaluation, and potentially strategic adaptation. She is not only contending with the private judgment itself, but with its cascading implications, relationships with family members, public perception, and her own sense of place within the monarchy. The emotional landscape is further complicated by Meghan's identity as a modern, independent woman. She values transparency, authenticity, and personal agency, qualities that are tested when private assessments challenge self-perception. The letters are not mere commentary. They are instruments that influence behavior, expectations, and relationships. Meghan must navigate the delicate balance of honoring her own principles while responding to the unspoken guidance embedded in the Queen's words. Moreover, the discovery of the letters, or even the anticipation of their existence, introduces an element of uncertainty. Meghan may question who else knows, who has read them, and how their contents influence decisions about her role, responsibilities, and visibility. The ripple effect extends beyond immediate family members to advisors, staff, and the broader institution of the monarchy. Each action is now filtered through the prism of both public scrutiny and private evaluation, intensifying the pressures Meghan faces daily. Despite the emotional turbulence, Meghan is resilient. She has demonstrated the capacity to navigate complex social dynamics, manage public perception, and assert her influence within constrained environments. Yet the letters introduce a challenge of a different magnitude, a private narrative that has the power to shape family dynamics, trust, and personal identity. It is a quiet, persistent force that requires awareness, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence to manage effectively. And just as Meghan begins to process these private revelations, a new factor enters the equation. The knowledge that Princess and holds the letters, has read them, and understands their implications. Anne's discretion, judgment, and potential choices add another layer of uncertainty. Meghan may not know exactly what and knows, how she interprets the letters, or whether this knowledge will eventually be revealed. The interplay of private awareness, hidden information, and relational dynamics intensifies the pressure, creating a high-stakes environment in which every interaction carries meaning and consequence. But what Meghan would do next, as these undercurrents of private judgment and public expectation converged, would redefine her place in the royal family and spark a series of events no one could have anticipated. What makes a royal favorite? Is it charm, public poise, or the careful alignment of behavior with centuries-old expectations? For Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, the answer is all of these, and more. While Meghan Markle navigated the complexities of the palace with modern flair and charisma, Catherine steadily solidified her position through a combination of sincerity, strategic patience, and an innate understanding of what the Queen valued most. The letters discovered by Princess and reveal the subtle blueprint of this rise, a quiet acknowledgement that Catherine's authenticity and grounded nature placed her firmly in the Queen's favor, while Meghan's ambition and perceived self-interest raised private concerns. Catherine's ascent within the royal hierarchy was not accidental. From the earliest days of her public engagement with the family, she demonstrated a careful calibration of behavior, tone, and initiative. She respected tradition without being rigid, showed empathy without appearing calculated, and projected warmth without compromising the dignity required of her station. These qualities were not only visible to the public, but crucially noticed by the Queen and senior members of the family. Every gesture, whether a smile during a public engagement, a thoughtful gift for a staff member, or a quietly executed act of charity, reinforced the perception of sincerity. The Queen's letters praised these attributes, emphasizing that Catherine's intentions were aligned with the long-term values and expectations of the monarchy. Contrast this with Meghan's trajectory. Meghan entered the family bringing modern perspectives, media savvy, and a strong sense of self. While these qualities are celebrated in contemporary society, within the royal family, they can be interpreted differently. The Queen's letters, noting Meghan's self-serving tendencies, reflect caution, a recognition that charisma alone does not guarantee trustworthiness or alignment with institutional expectations. Meghan's approach, while sincere in her eyes, was being measured against the subtle benchmarks that Catherine had consistently embodied. The comparison is stark yet delicate, illustrating how perception, alignment with values, and subtlety define influence in royal life. Catherine's rise is also a study in emotional intelligence. She consistently demonstrated the ability to read situations, assess personalities, and respond with measured grace. Whether interacting with the Queen, senior advisors, or palace staff, Catherine exhibited a composure that engendered trust. In contrast, Meghan's assertiveness, while effective in public arenas, occasionally conflicted with private expectations. The letters highlight this nuance. Catherine's behavior was consistently interpreted as aligned with the institution's values, whereas Meghan's was privately evaluated with caution. In the monarchy, such evaluations carry immense weight. They subtly guide decisions about public roles, private responsibilities, and relational trust. The implications of this private comparison extend beyond personality or temperament. They influence the distribution of responsibilities, visibility in charitable initiatives, and participation in ceremonial events. Catherine's alignment with the Queen's expectations opened doors to greater visibility, deeper trust, and a more secure place within the family hierarchy. Meghan, despite her high-profile engagements and public acclaim, faced the subtle challenge of navigating these hierarchies while maintaining her authenticity and agency. The tension between these dynamics underscores the complex interplay of perception, privilege, and alignment within the royal family. The emotional dimension is significant. Meghan, learning of these letters, or even sensing their implications, would naturally grapple with feelings of inadequacy, frustration, and perhaps even betrayal. Publicly celebrated, yet privately scrutinized, she must reconcile her self-perception with the quiet evaluations made in the Queen's hand. Catherine's steady rise, in contrast, reinforces the perception of favoritism and alignment, creating an invisible yardstick against which Meghan is measured. This dynamic is not overt, but profoundly influential, shaping behavior, expectations, and the psychological landscape of palace life. Furthermore, the Queen's strategic genius is evident in the way she communicates through private letters. By praising Catherine and subtly cautioning Meghan, she achieves multiple objectives, guiding behavior, reinforcing desirable traits, and signaling priorities without overt confrontation. The letters serve as both counsel and instrument of influence, maintaining harmony while shaping the family's internal dynamics. This method of subtle guidance reflects the Queen's understanding of human psychology, institutional legacy, and the need to balance personal affection with strategic oversight. Catherine's rise is also reinforced by her ability to navigate media scrutiny and public perception. While Meghan faced intense global attention from the outset, Catherine's visibility grew in tandem with her perceived authenticity and alignment with royal values. The letters, praising her sincerity, reflect an acknowledgement of this dual importance, public conduct and private alignment. In the monarchy, both are essential, and Catherine's consistent execution of these principles strengthened her position, both within the family and in the court of public opinion. The contrast with Meghan also highlights the subtle pressures of relational dynamics within the palace. Kate's alignment with expectations fosters trust, stability, and predictability, qualities valued highly in the royal household. Meghan's presence, while dynamic and transformative, introduces variability, prompting private caution and careful observation. The letters serve as a formal acknowledgement of this dynamic. Kate as the model, Meghan as the cautionary example. These distinctions are quiet yet powerful, influencing everything from ceremony participation to charitable visibility to the delegation of responsibilities. Moreover, the letters underscore the importance of perception management. Catherine's ability to project authenticity, maintain composure, and align with tradition reinforces the Queen's confidence, creating a foundation for influence and favor. Meghan's challenges, by contrast, reflect the delicate balance required to integrate personal ambition with institutional expectations. The letters reveal not only the judgments made but the criteria upon which these judgments were based: alignment with values, discretion, humility, and the consistent demonstration of loyalty through action. Princess Anne's awareness of these letters adds a further layer of complexity and understands the subtlety, the stakes, and the potential consequences of these private assessments. Her position as observer, mediator, and confidant places her at the nexus of knowledge, influence, and ethical decision-making. The rise of Catherine, juxtaposed with Meghan's cautionary evaluation, is a dynamic and can interpret, anticipate, and navigate. Her choices, whether to reveal, advise, or remain silent, carry implications for trust, perception, and family cohesion. Finally, the emotional resonance cannot be overstated. For Meghan, witnessing or learning of Catherine's rise, especially when coupled with private critiques, would trigger reflection, strategy, and perhaps even confrontation with her own identity within the family. For Catherine, the acknowledgement of her sincerity reinforces confidence, stability, and the subtle power that comes from alignment with expectation. And for the Queen, these letters reflect a mastery of influence, guidance, and legacy, quietly steering the family's internal and public dynamics through the delicate medium of private correspondence. But Meghan's next moves, in response to these layered dynamics, would ignite tensions, provoke unexpected reactions, and ultimately redefine the balance between private judgment and public perception within the royal family. And no one could foresee just how dramatic the consequences would be. In a family defined by protocol, duty, and public scrutiny, Princess Anne has always occupied a unique space. Not known for flamboyance or spectacle, she wields her influence quietly but with precision. Loyal, principled, and fiercely intelligent, and is the quintessential observer in a household where perception shapes reality. The letters she discovered, revealing the Queen's private comparison between Meghan Markle and Catherine, placed her at the center of a delicate moral and emotional crossroads. To understand the gravity of her position, we must examine the full weight of secrecy, trust, and responsibility that comes with such a discovery. Imagine being the custodian of a truth that could reshape relationships, influence family dynamics, and alter public perception. That is exactly the position Anne found herself in. She had uncovered private words from her mother, words not meant to be shared, that evaluated two women, both integral to the future of the monarchy. Kate's sincerity was lauded. Meghan's motives were viewed with caution, and understood immediately that this knowledge was powerful and potentially destabilizing. In her hands lay not only information, but the emotional and relational fate of those involved. Anne's instinctive approach to family matters is one of observation first, action second. She is well aware that in the royal family, timing is critical. The wrong word, the wrong disclosure, or the wrong action can ignite long-lasting tensions and public scandal. Her discovery demanded discernment. She had to consider the ethical, emotional, and strategic dimensions. Revealing the letters could empower Meghan with insight, but risk inflaming conflict. Withholding them could maintain temporary peace, but allow misconceptions to persist, and selectively disclosing information required foresight and judgment. Every option carried consequence. The letters themselves reveal the Queen's careful calibration. By praising Kate and subtly cautioning Meghan, the Queen exercised influence without confrontation, and, understanding both the content and the intent, became the intermediary in this quiet orchestration. Her knowledge positions her as a guardian of not just documents, but of emotional and relational stability. She understands that secrecy, in this context, is not merely about discretion. It is about preserving trust, protecting legacy, and navigating complex human behavior within a high-stakes environment. Anne's role extends beyond observation. She is also a model for measured action. In a household where personal judgment is intertwined with institutional responsibility, her decisions carry weight. She must balance loyalty to the Queen with empathy toward Meghan, understanding that the letters could be perceived as critique or guidance depending on context. Her experience allows her to interpret the nuances of the Queen's words, recognizing both praise and caution, and to anticipate how these evaluations might influence behavior, perception, and relationships. Emotionally, the burden is immense, and is not simply reading words on paper. She is witnessing the internal evaluation of family members whose lives are intertwined with duty, legacy, and identity. Meghan's feelings, Harry's protective instincts, Kate's position, all are affected by the quiet but powerful messages embedded in the letters, and must weigh these human factors against her understanding of tradition, propriety, and the unspoken codes of royal life. The stakes are personal and institutional, moral and strategic. Anne's awareness of subtle power dynamics is crucial. The letters are more than private opinions. They are tools for shaping behavior. Kate's praised authenticity positions her as a model, implicitly influencing expectations of others. Meghan's cautionary assessment signals the need for careful alignment with family values and discretion, and sees that the silent currents of influence embedded in the letters can guide actions, relationships, and perceptions in ways that are invisible to outsiders but profound within the palace. This role also highlights Anne's exceptional emotional intelligence. She must navigate feelings of loyalty, fairness, and empathy while interpreting the Queen's intent. Every decision carries potential ramifications. Revealing the letters could provoke defensiveness or strain. Withholding them could protect Meghan but perpetuate unspoken tensions. And using the knowledge strategically requires foresight and sensitivity. Anne's judgment in this context is both moral and tactical. The guardian role extends beyond Meghan and Kate to the broader family. Harry and William, too, are implicated in the dynamics the letters reveal. Harry, as Meghan's ally, may react strongly to private critiques, while William, aligned with Kate, benefits from the implicit affirmation of the Queen's judgment. Anne's understanding of these interpersonal dynamics allows her to anticipate potential conflicts and mediate subtly, maintaining family cohesion without overt interference. Furthermore, Anne's position is complicated by the interplay between public and private perception. The letters exist in a private sphere, yet their potential revelation could dramatically reshape narratives, influence media discourse, and affect public opinion. And understands that secrecy is not merely about discretion. It is a tool for managing the delicate equilibrium between transparency, privacy, and influence. Historically, Anne has demonstrated her capacity to navigate such pressures. Known for her straightforward honesty and principled approach, she can deliver counsel, assert authority, and mediate disputes without escalating tensions. Her role as guardian of the Queen's private assessment of Meghan and Kate exemplifies this capacity. She interprets the letters not only for their content, but for their implications, guiding behavior and managing relationships with the wisdom of experience. The letters also reflect broader lessons about the monarchy's functioning. Private evaluations, subtle guidance, and careful observation are central to maintaining harmony, managing perception, and ensuring continuity. Anne's role as a guardian illuminates the human dimension of monarchy, the necessity of discretion, the weight of knowledge, and the responsibility that comes with understanding the private thoughts of powerful figures. Emotionally, the situation is fraught, and must reconcile loyalty to her mother, empathy for Meghan, and awareness of the broader family dynamics. Her choices impact relationships, trust, and the narrative of the monarchy itself. Every moment of reflection, every decision about disclosure or discretion is amplified by the stakes inherent in royal life. And yet, despite the burden, Anne's actions are guided by clarity, foresight, and a sense of duty. She recognizes that her position as the guardian of secrets is both a responsibility and an opportunity. Through measured judgment, she can preserve relationships, influence behavior, and maintain the delicate balance of trust, loyalty, and perception within the family. But the question remains, how will Anne's stewardship of these letters and her careful navigation of private knowledge influence Meghan's next moves, and what unforeseen consequences will emerge when the private becomes public? The stage is set for revelations that will test loyalty, perception, and the resilience of relationships within the palace, and no one can predict exactly how the tension will unfold.